Today we're going to do pasta puttanesca with olives. It's really fairly easy. It takes maybe about a half an hour, but you can do it ahead of time, or at least do some parts of it ahead of time. But you can make the sauce a day or two ahead. Like all tomato sauces, it tends to develop some flavor as it goes along. So I've got a large pan because I want some evaporation so the sauce will thicken a little bit. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil to it. You could use canola oil or another type. Make sure it's a little bit toasty. The pan was good and hot, so it's ready to go. And then I've got about a half a cup of chopped onion. So we're going to just put it in here, stir it around a little bit, and then we're going to let it simmer for about 5 minutes, just until it gets a little bit translucent. All right, you can see how the onion has mellowed out there. It's gotten a little translucent. It looks beautiful, but it's not browned, which is our goal. So have the heat on low enough. What I have here are 4 cloves of garlic. If you're using a commercial minced garlic, then that'd be about 4 teaspoons of garlic. So there's a lot of garlic here for the number of servings you're going to end up with, but that's going to add a lot of flavor to it as well. The little green is a little bit of mint that was in the cup that I used. So don't panic, we won't be tasting that later. And it's not because I didn't get the garlic all the way cleaned either. So this is going to cook for about a minute, 30 seconds to a minute. You don't want the garlic to brown. So I'm going to go ahead and add a 28-ounce can or a quart, if you've done them yourself, of petite diced or diced tomatoes. If you don't have either of those, you can use whole tomatoes. Just make sure you break them up into small pieces. Interesting thing about the tomatoes that you buy commercially, if they're petite diced, they're going to have, if they're diced tomatoes, they're going to have more calcium in the can than they will if they're whole tomatoes or crushed tomatoes, and so they're going to hold their shape. So you use the diced tomatoes when you still want to see a dice later on. If you don't want to see a dice in them, as I really don't want to see one here particularly, then you'd use one that's going to have less calcium in it. All of them commercially will have some that helps the tomato hold its shape. Now also into this we're going to add a half a cup of olives that have just been coarsely chopped. I'm using Kalamata olives. If you've got mixed olives, say you've gone to the market and you saw they had an olive bar, this would be a great time to try out some of those. Just make sure, of course, you pit them in the process so that nobody gets that surprise bit like the cherry pie. There's always seems to be one seed left in that. I've also got a tablespoon of capers and 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, which we'll try and get in there. These are all going to stir together, and then we're going to let it simmer together so that the flavors have a chance to blend. And for about 20 minutes before we move on to the next stage. And then also I'm going to add, let me see, half a teaspoon of red pepper flakes. And this one, depending on how daring you are, you can go up or down with. And you may want to just let it simmer with this amount for a while, and then you could boost it with a little more pepper towards the end because the pepper flavors will mellow out over time. And again, bring it up to a boil, then reduce it and let it simmer for about 20 minutes. Now, in the meantime, while that is cooking, we've got a pot of hot water here, and I'm not going to add the pasta to it yet. I'm going to use either use a whole wheat pasta or a multi-grain pasta, or one with a protein boost as opposed to the plain pasta, and that just is going to add a little bit more nutrition to the meal. So that's a good thing to do there, but I don't want to overcook it. It needs to cook somewhere between 10 to 12 minutes usually for spaghetti, which is what I'm going to use. You could use linguine, you could use any kind of pasta that you have, but just make sure that you don't start it so early that it's ready and being held and you're waiting on the sauce to finish cooking. So I'm going to give it, since this is 20 minutes and it could go a little bit longer, I'm going to wait till we're about 10 minutes left on this, and then I'm going to start the pasta. Whenever you cook pasta, it's a good idea to save some of the pasta water, even if you don't need it later on, to help thin the sauce out. Often what I find is that I don't eat all the pasta on the first day, so I have the pasta mixed with the sauce, and on the second day, it's gotten a little bit too thick, and just using water isn't as useful. But if I have some of the sauce, it's got some of the starch in it as well, and so it does a real nice job of thinning down the sauce on the pasta or the sauce itself. So let me grab my pot holders. We're going to drain the pasta now that we've saved some of the liquid. And then we'll go back over and check on the sauce itself. Now, what can happen here is you can go one of two ways. You can either put the pasta back in the big pot and then mix everything together with the sauce. I'm going to do it a little bit different way, in that I'm going to put some of the pasta on the plate, and then I'm going to put the sauce over it. Now, if you do this on a platter, that's fine. That works great. And that's probably enough for a serving. I've got a few of the actual olives here reserved, and we'll put a little bit of sauce over the top. And that if you want to, you can put a little bit of Parmesan cheese on top of this, or a little bit of basil. Now you could shred the basil, do a chiffonade. I'm just going to put a sprig of basil over the top of it. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is I've got some toasted walnuts, and we're going to sprinkle those around as well. Now this adds some texture that you wouldn't have otherwise, but the other nice thing it does is it adds a lot of protein and some additional flavor. So just toast the nuts up in a skillet for a little bit, and it really boosts everything about this dish. It makes it really, really special. You could use other nuts as well. I've used walnuts on this one. I hope you'll give it a try. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown, and this is pasta puttanesca with olives.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.